Louise Mildred Turner, 1893 to 1981. Part 2, 1935 to 1981. In 1935, Louise and Jess hold a party to celebrate Dick's high school graduation. We see from the left Pearl Dell Forbes McLaughlin, Anna's sister, her husband, William John McLaughlin, Bess Wishart in back, Henry Elijah Arnold, Dorothy McLaughlin, holding hands with Charles Arthur Turner, Art and Zella's son, Anna Matilda Forbes Turner, then Charles Edward Turner, Buck Arnold in back, Louise Turner Arnold, Dick Arnold, and Jess Arnold on the far right. Also in 1935, we see Louise and two friends on a car trip. Charles Edward Turner, Louise's husband, father, dies on January 26, 1935, in Beaumont, Texas. He is 74. His daughter Helen lives in Beaumont. After his graduation, Dick attends the Chenard Art Institute in Los Angeles for 2 years. In 1937, Dick enrolls at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. 4 years later, he graduates with a BA degree in art and education. In high school, Dick contributes artwork to the school's yearbooks. In Albuquerque, he volunteers to work on the student team that produces The Mirage, a yearbook. By his senior year, he is supervising editor of the yearbook. In his editorial capacity, he works closely with Marion Burnett, a fellow student at the University of New Mexico. A relationship develops between Dick and Marion. Dick meets Marion's parents, who live in Albuquerque. In 1939, Dick takes Marion home to Long Beach to meet his parents. We see the couple in Long Beach with Dick's family. From the left, Amy Applegate, Guy's wife, Louise, Margaret, then Buck, Guy, Dick, and Marion holding her coat. In the next pictures, we see Dick and Marion seated at a table in the backyard with Louise, and posing for a picture in the front yard in Long Beach. Dick's relationship with Marion suddenly ends. Marion has a chronic medical condition. Dick's parents, who are Christian Scientists, consider Marion's condition to be a game changer. They convince Dick to break off the relationship. Meanwhile, Buck graduates from high school in 1937. Afterwards, he enrolls at Washington State College in Pullman. In the first photo, we see Buck on the steps of Stimson Hall in Pullman. In November 1940, Buck marries Margaret Louise Monty. Dick draws a cartoon wedding announcement and sends it to them. Jess and Louise know Margaret's parents, Frank and Belle, through their relationship in the same Christian Science church. This is probably the connection that brought Buck and Margaret together. In 1940, Jess and Louise and their friends and in-laws, Frank and Belle Monty, buy adjoining 20-acre properties in the Orange County countryside in Santa Ana Canyon, the present-day location of the suburb Anaheim Hills. The Arnolds and Montys began preparing their home sites on adjoining hilltops. Frank is a civil engineer, and his expertise is a big factor in the choice, purchase, and preparation of the two home sites. In the first photo, we see from the left Belle Monty, Frank Monty, Louise, Margaret, Catherine Sitzman, Belle's daughter, and Jess. In the next photo, we see the group as under their sunshade: Louise, Belle, Margaret, Buck, and then Jess. In the last photo, we see Frank Monty leveling the home site with a plow, with Louise and Belle on the right holding the mules. Anna Matilda Forbes Turner, Louise's mother, dies on July 19, 1940 in Los Angeles. She is 70 years old. In the early 1940s, with Dick and Buck away from home, Louise works as a seamstress for a dressmaker in Long Beach. Dick graduates from the University of New Mexico in 1940 and is admitted into a graduate program at Colorado State College of Education in Greeley. 1 year later, he completes a program in fine arts and receives a Master of Arts degree. Elizabeth, Liz, Lloyd Hill is a student in the art class that Dick teaches at Greeley. Dick and Liz start dating. Liz lives with her Aunt Bert, that's Bertha Rose Hotelling, and her grandmother Gertie, that's Isidore Gertrude May Hinkson Gotelling, while she attends classes for her BA degree. Bert is impressed with Dick and endorses Dick's engagement to Liz on behalf of the family. Dick later sends his relatives in California a cartoon announcement of the engagement. Dick is drafted into the U.S. Army in 1942. He moves to Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland and goes through basic training. Liz takes the train to Aberdeen and marries Dick on July 28, 1942. Dick supervises the art department at Aberdeen and is promoted to sergeant. Their first child, Stephen James Arnold, is born on October 11, 1944, just as World War II is drawing to a close. Buck is drafted into the U.S. Navy. He serves his tour of duty and is discharged in 1945. On his way back to California, he visits Dick, Liz, and one-year-old Steve in Aberdeen. Dick brings a movie camera home from the Army base and makes a short movie that includes his brother, wife, and child. In February 1945, Buck is back in Long Beach with Margaret and his daughter, Susan. Meanwhile, Jess, Louise, Frank, and Belle and their neighbors in Santa Ana Canyon assemble to celebrate July 4th, 1945, and the end of World War II. In the photo, we see Louise with neighbors and family. From the left, the first person is an unknown neighbor, then May Steckart, Louise Arnold, Margaret Arnold with Susan holding a flag, Dorothy Henning, Ina Gilroy, and Belle Monty. Ina is Belle's sister. In the fall of 1945, Dick, Liz, and Steve arrive in Long Beach. They have traveled by train from Maryland by way of Iowa. They move into 4002 Massachusetts Street in Long Beach with Jess and Louise. During their first year in California, Dick takes Liz to a Christian Science service. They sit in the back of the room. During the service, Liz starts giggling, and soon both of them have to leave the service because they can't control their laughter. This may have been the actual moment when Dick lost his Christian Science faith. Soon after Dick and Liz disavowed institutionalized religion. They never joined a church. My cousin Susan recalls part of her conversation she overheard in the 1950s or 1960s. Margaret recounts to Louise a comment made by Liz. Louise says, "Well, she would say that. She was raised in medicine." In other words, Louise viewed modern medicine as a religious alternative to Christian Science. In 1946, the Arnolds and Montes get together for Thanksgiving. We see from the left Dick holding his camera, then Liz, Helen, Louise, Margaret, Belle holding Shala, Jean Sitzman, Catherine's daughter, then Catherine Sitzman, Belle's daughter, Jess, and then Frank. In the front, we see Susan, Steve, and Lynn. In 1946, Virginia Weber, Helen's daughter, is in town and is photographed at the ranch with Louise, holding Chris, Jess, Liz, in back of Steve, and Dick. In the next photo, Margaret and Virginia sunbathe on what will later be the front lawn. In 1947, Margaret's family is at the ranch for dinner. We see Margaret and Louise on one side of the table facing William Webb Monty, Margaret's brother, his son Billy, Mary Trainer Monty, Belle, and Frank, mostly out of view. In 1949, Louise has lunch with her Steckert and Henning neighbors in Santa Ana Canyon. Inez Henning and her one-year-old son is out of focus. From the left, we see May Steckart holding Arthur Henning Jr., Dorothy Henning, then Louise Arnold, and finally Inez Henning. Guy Arnold, Jess's brother, dies in 1949. He is 61 years old. Jess and Louise, with Susan, attend Guy's funeral in San Diego. Frank Monty, Margaret's father, dies on October 28, 1950, in Los Angeles County. He is 71 years old. In 1954, Dick and his family visit the ranch. Jess uses his Jeep to take them on a tour of the avocado grove and the hill above the grove. In the photo, we see Louise on the right leaning against the Green Hornet, with Steve near the front seat and Chris climbing onto Liz, who is holding Tim. Later in 1954, Liz's parents, Bill and Mary Hill, visit from Iowa. Dick and Liz take them up to the ranch for a tour. In the first photo, we see Louise next to Steve with Tim on her lap, then Lynn and Mary on the far right. On a couple of occasions in the 1950s, Chris and I stay at the ranch with Louise by ourselves for an entire week. These are glorious visits for us. We explore the ranch and bask in the warmth of our grandmother's affection. We call her Ganny. She offers us canned fruit to put on our cereal in the morning and bakes us peach pies with lattice tops for dinner. The pie is served with generous scoops of ice cream. Our daily assignment is to collect fresh eggs from the hen house. We learn to reach under the sitting hens to get their eggs and to ignore the mild pecking defense that they offer. The hens come in two sizes, regular and banty. We prefer the small bantam hens. We pick them up and tuck them under our arms. An orchard of fruit trees surrounds the hen house. We walk among the trees as we pick and eat ripe peaches, plums, and tangerines. We are free to explore the ranch property. I turn rocks to find lizards and dash after butterflies and grasshoppers with my butterfly net. Late one afternoon, I make a breathtaking discovery on the hilltop below the ranch house. A tarantula hawk drags a paralyzed tarantula across the ground. The spider is huge and the wasp is beautiful. I follow the wasp for several yards as she drags her prey, but then it is getting dark and I must return to the house, where I describe my experience. I know the story of the tarantula hawk from the 1953 Disney movie, The Living Desert. The female paralyzes the tarantula by stinging it. She drags the spider to a burrow she has constructed, pulls the spider inside, and lays a single egg on the spider. Later, the egg hatches into a larva, which devours the living but paralyzed spider and then pupates. Months later, a new Pepsis wasp emerges and flies away to look for mates or prey. In 1956, the Buck and Dick Arnolds make one of their last family trips to the ranch. In the photo, we see from the left, Chris in back of Monty, then Susan in back of Lynn, who is holding Tim, and Steve holding Elisa. In 1956, the Arnold family get together at Buck and Margaret's house for Thanksgiving. In the photo, we see Bess Wishart next to Steve, then Louise, Liz holding Elisa, Belle next to Margaret, and then Monty. Lynn is behind Louise holding a white cat. In the next picture, we see all the cousins. In the back row, Monty, Lynn, Steve, and Sue. And in the front row, Chris, Elisa, and Tim. In 1956, Louise and Jess go on a camping trip to Lake Kachuma in Santa Barbara County with Buck, Dick, Steve, Chris, and Monty. We see Louise making lunch with Monty and Chris. It's a little out of focus. Jess dies of a heart attack on October 17, 1958 in Long Beach. A few years before, he had a heart attack at the ranch while lifting the heavy door of his garage. His doctor advised him to avoid strenuous activity. Jess and Louise sell the ranch and move to Lakewood, a Long Beach suburb. Jess's passing is a huge loss to all the family, but most of all for Louise. The family pulls Louise close to comfort her. After Jess dies, Louise sells the house in Lakewood. She moves into Villa Riviera apartments on the shore in Long Beach. The next two photos are taken inside her apartment. In 1959, the Arnold families get together at Dick and Liz's house in Arcadia. We see from the left Dick, Margaret, Louise with her arms on Tim and Lisa, Susan in back, then Lynn, Bess Wishart, Liz, Monty with a football, Helen hoteling Ringrose, Liz's aunt, Chris, and Steve. In the next picture, we see Louise with her grandchildren, and then in the final picture, Louise with Dick and Buck. Pearl Dell Forbes McLaughlin, Louise's aunt, dies in 1960 in Garden Grove, California. She is 76 years old. In 1961, Margaret has a dinner party for Ina, Belle's sister. In the photo we see, starting on the left, Louise in a polka dot dress, Ina mostly out of view, then Monty, Belle, Lynn, Sue, and Margaret. In July 1961, Louise takes Susan and Lynn on a first-class trip to Hawaii. They board their ship, the SS Lurline, in Long Beach and arrive in Honolulu 4 days later. In the photo, we see Louise, Susan, and Lynn with the folks that shared their table at the captain's champagne dinner. Louise is the third person from the left side, standing next to Susan. Lynn is the third person from the right side. They stay at a hotel overlooking Waikiki Beach. They visit Pearl Harbor. At the Pearl Harbor National Memorial, they encounter throngs of Japanese tourists. They make a short flight to Kauai, where they stay at the Coco Palms Resort on Wailua Beach. The trip is an eye-opening experience for Lynn and Sue. It is easy to imagine that Louise had a wonderful time as well. After Jess's passing, Louise made several trips to see her sister Helen in Beaumont, Texas, as well as cruise along the Inner Passage to Alaska. In 1962, Louise gives Steve $1,000 for college. In the photo, Steve stands on the steps of Stratford Hall on Durant Street in Berkeley. Louise Gifts pays for his freshman year at UC Berkeley. When Steve describes his first year at college, Louise tells him that Jess would have loved to hear about what he is doing. In 1966, Louise and Bess Wishart are photographed at a family event in Arcadia. Louise's brother, William Edward Turner, dies in 1964. He is 64 years old. Louise's brother-in-law, Frank Weber, dies in 1965. He is 82 years old. Louise's brother, Arthur Norwood Turner, dies in 1968. He is 79. From 1965 to 1970, Elisa made 3 overnight visits to stay with Louise at her Villa Riviera apartment. Elisa stayed for a weekend when she was in 5th or 6th grade, about 1965. Louise took Elisa to Bufham's, an upscale department store, to shop and eat lunch. They ate dinner at the restaurant downstairs from the apartment and made breakfast and lunch in the apartment. Later, Elisa and her best friend, Donna Berger, stayed with Louise for a week. First when they were in junior high school, about 1967, and when Elisa and Donna came for spring break. They spent time on the beach and also visited with Louise. In high school, about 1970, Elisa and Donna came back for another week-long visit. Lynn Arnold marries Gail Wilson on June 18, 1966. In the photo, we see Lynn in her bridal gown with Louise. In December 1969, Lynn poses for a 4-generation photograph. We see Lynn in the back, Buck on the right, and Louise holding Tina Wilson on her lap. In 1967, Chris is a minor league baseball player. He learns that he has been drafted by the U.S. Navy and must report for his physical exam in Long Beach. He works out a plan with Louise to visit her after the exam and then stay overnight before returning to Arcadia. Chris is relaxed as he drives to his physical. A few weeks before, he was unable to duck an inside pitch, and the baseball broke the orbit of his left eye. A stainless steel plate has been surgically inserted below his eye. His vision is 20/40. Chris figures that he is likely to fail his physical exam. The Navy doctor thinks otherwise. He tells Chris that his left eye is healing and looks good. Chris passes his exam. Afterwards, he meets Louise at the Villa Riviera. That night, they have dinner in the restaurant downstairs. It is not the celebration that Chris was hoping for. Chris puts his professional baseball career on the shelf for a couple of years while he serves in the U.S. Navy submarine force. In the spring of 1971, Liz and Dick drive from Arcadia, California to Phoenix, Arizona to see Chris play in AAA baseball. They swing by Long Beach on the way to pick up Louise, who also wants to watch the game. Chris is having a very good season and appears destined to move up to the big club, the San Francisco Giants. The photo shows Candlestick Park in San Francisco with seating for nearly 70,000 fans. While they're in Phoenix, Liz, Dick, and Louise meet Diane Downer, who is engaged to Chris. In the weeks that follow, Chris is promoted and joins the roster of the Giants. On September 7th, 1971, Chris makes his major league debut at Dodger Stadium. The San Francisco Giants are playing the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Arnold family attends the game, hoping that Chris will play. The family entourage includes Louise, Dick, Liz, Buck, Margaret, Susan, and Tim. In the middle of the game, Chris is called off the bench to pitch hit with runners on first and second and Claude Osteen pitching. As Chris steps to the plate, the Dodgers call timeout so that the manager, first baseman, third baseman, catcher, and pitcher can huddle at the pitcher's mound. Osteen is facing an unknown batter. They want to determine if anyone knows Chris's vulnerabilities as a batter. Meanwhile, umpire Doug Harvey dusts off the home plate facing away from Chris. He asks Chris, "How are you doing?" Chris replies that he can feel his legs shaking. Harvey said he should do just what he's been training to do for this moment. Chris instantly relaxes. The announcer for the Giants, Lon Simmons, fills the time by recounting the contest between Chris Arnold and Chris Spire to be promoted to the varsity team. He says that Spire was promoted first and Arnold stayed in Phoenix with Jim Davenport, the manager of the Giants' AAA team in Phoenix. Then he breaks away from his story to say that Chris gets a hit. Let's listen to the actual recording of Lon Simmons in that moment.
A battle in spring training with Arnold and Spire both battling to work their way onto the varsity. Spire made it. Arnold stayed at Phoenix and did a good job for Jimmy Davenport down there. 2-1 count. 2-1 pitch. Swung on line drive into right center field, going over Davis, and he can't hold it. It's off his glove. And Hart will come in to score. Davis tried to make a leaping catch of that line drive into right center that was taking off. He made a leap for the ball, had it in the webbing of his glove. It dropped out. It will go as a single for Arnold. His first major league at bat is a base hit that drives in the run that makes it a 4-3 ball game.
Chris gets a hit on his debut and an RBI. This moment must have been one of the most exciting in Louise's life. Louise is a devoted fan throughout Chris's Major League Baseball career and is sitting behind the home plate with Buck and his family when Chris has his big moment. In 1975, Louise is living at Buena Vista Manor, an assisted living facility in Duarte near Arcadia. We see her in the photo holding a live rabbit. When Dick, Elisa, and I visit her, she has trouble remembering recent events. She recounts a fire that happened in Iowa when she was a child, and in detail. Louise and her sister Helen Weber write letters to each other while Louise is in assisted living. The photo shows Helen's last letter to Louise. It is dated January 13th, 1980. Louise Mildred Turner dies on January 1st, 1981 in Duarte, California. Many of us remember Louise's kindness, which was spontaneous and ever-present. She made sure that her sons knew their grandparents, uncles, aunts, and cousins. She planned trips and special events for her children and grandchildren. She talked to us and made sure that we were informed and happy. One of Everett Arnold's great grandchildren told me that Louise also was revered for her kindness in his limb of the family. Several of Everett's descendants were named Louise to honor her, including my confidant's grandmother, Louise Arnold. In 1981, Susan organizes a Louise Memorial Tree planting at her house in Yorba Linda, which is across the Santa Ana River Valley from the ranch. Both of Louise's children, 5 of her grandchildren, and 5 of her great-grandchildren are present for the event. In the photo, we see from the left Buck, Dick, Tim, Liz, Chris, Margaret, Diane, Chris's wife, Lynn, Sue, Monty, and Linda, Monty's wife, nearly out of view. The kids are in front are Katie in front of Lynn, Amy in front of Sue, Jenny and Tina in front of Monty, and Tracy in front of Christina. Jenny is Sue's daughter. Amy and Katie are Monty's daughters. Christina and Tracy are Lynn's daughters. The photo captures part of Louise's heritage. It reminds us that Louise lives on in our memories.